Okay, and welcome back. So today, we'll be doing something a little different. Instead of making a new batch of stars, we're actually going to be kind of changing the shape of our stars here into rising tails. So these little tubes here, about a 1/2 inch diameter, and we'll actually be filling these with star composition, which then when our shell goes up, people will actually be able to see it. So we've got some leftover violet from last year, and then some violet that was turned into kind of that. So the first thing we'll be doing is screening those out. I believe this should catch our actual stars. And then we'll reuse this bag for the actual stars that we made last episode. Or the fresh ones, I guess. Then there shouldn't be any real stars in this one, but we'll go ahead and screen it. So those are all good violet stars. We'll throw those in the bag. Whenever I put the ones on the drying rack in there. So now these, we're going to melt back down. So because we're using Parlon, it's soluble in acetone. We can really melt it down an infinite number of times. So we've got almost an 8-ounce batch. So I don't have a calculator on me, or I'd do the ratio to figure out exactly how much acetone we need. But instead of the full 1.7 ounces we do for an 8-ounce batch, we'll start with 1.5 and see how far that gets us. Again, if we need more, we can always add more, but if we add too much, it makes it a little hard to take away. Had I been a smart man, I'd have zeroed the scale before I did this, because 1.65 plus 1.5, say, would be about 10.05-ish. So, quick arithmetic. I know I suck at math, especially on the fly. So yeah, we're just gonna remelt this down. It should, as the Parlon gets exposed to the acetone, it should just remelt, really. Mix it around here. Get everything nice and saturated. And you can already see that it's starting to melt down. Obviously, it takes a little longer because of your surface area ratio in a powder is going to be much higher than stars, regardless of what size they really are. So now we're going to give this a second to melt. So the thing about these big tubes is that they don't actually start this high. Whenever you order them from Skylighter, there it is. They come in these little, now these are good for like mini rockets, or the big thing is, you see how thick these are? They can withstand a little bit of pressure, which is what makes them good for fireworks. And there's also something to do with the style of how they're made, but I don't remember the difference right now. I want to say it's like parallel versus wrap, and I really don't remember, so I can't comment on that. But, so I'm taking box knife with a blade. I was fresh when I started doing this. And I'm just kind of going roughly in the middle. And you're just kind of working it. you're basically cutting the same spot multiple times, and that's how you're getting through these. And this is also why you really need to have a sharp blade when you do it, because the chance of hurting yourself with a sharp blade is actually less than if you were using a dull. But yeah, cutting paper is difficult and dangerous, so if you're not confident, then wear a cut-resistant glove, or you can get box knives that are auto-retract, so if you let go of it, it'll pull the blade back in. But yeah, I've dulled this out just with paper. So we've got roughly 2 equal halves. In trying to do it quickly, I crushed it a little bit. If you take your time and, again, make multiple passes, then you won't crush them. They'll stay a little rounder. Or if you find a better method, then let me know, because this is just the best way I've found to do it. So what we want with these is really a high surface area on our rising tail, but we only really want it from one direction. So by making them super wide but super thin, they'll burn brightly and they'll burn for a short time, and that will actually help us to get them to work. Because the whole point of this is that it's going to be on the outside of the shell, and when it gets launched by our lifting charge, this will be lit on the outside of the shell, and it gives people something to look at. You know, they'll be able to see where it's going. Whereas if we just had a regular shell and we launched it, then as soon as it's airborne, people see the flame and the smoke and all that from the launch, and they know that it's launched. But as soon as any black powder that was on the outside of the shell or any fuse that was attached to it burns off, then they can't actually see the shell anymore. They're looking for a small black dot traveling at like 50 feet per second. I think they say it's actually like 3 meters a second average. They're not going to be able to see it with a 4-second time to apex, so the point where it runs out of energy and starts to go back down. It's everyone's going to be looking at it, and when they don't see a boom, that's about how long it takes them to go, oh, it was a dud, and then it blows up. So very good for fake outs, but not great for a show. That was a lesson learned. I mistakenly thought that you wanted your firework to blow up as high as possible, because the higher it was, the better it would look, right? Well, turns out no. You actually want, so you time your stars and how long they take to burn. And that's why kind of diameter matters with the smaller shells, is because we need something that will fill the shell and be able to burst, and like the bigger they are, the longer they burn. So then the bigger the fireworks look, because the further the stars can travel. And with a bigger shell, we have more energy. They'll be thrown further before they run out of energy and start to fall. But if we make them too big, then they fall back to the ground and they're still burning, and they're burning very, very hot, because again, we're using stuff like magnesium, which is literally a magnesium fire. So try to get our gloves on for working with this. But we're literally making a magnesium fire, and if it lands in dry brush or on a person, then they're going to be burned horribly and start a fire. Yes, if it lands on people and they get burned, they become arsonists after that. That's how that works. Them's the rules. So, I think all of our smaller stars have fairly well melted, but it kind of feels like gravel. So I'm thinking the bigger stars that were in there haven't melted yet. Still plenty of acetone though. That's why it looks very appetizing. So yeah, if you time your shells and then you figure out how long it takes them to reach their apex and they burst there, then they're going to be way too high up and they're not going to look that impressive. So I had store-bought like 1 3/4 shells next to my 3-inch shells, and my 3-inch shells are obviously almost twice the diameter. Yep, you can see where I break through the glove there. But despite them being almost twice the diameter, they looked the same size, and it was because mine were going so much higher. So, a quick math lesson for anybody. If you order a large pizza and someone offers to trade you 2 medium pizzas, don't take that deal, because the one big or large pizza normally has more surface area than 2 mediums. Because remember, air volume of a sphere is pi diameter squared. And so when you figure out area of a circle, then you're not just multiplying 2 numbers, it's exponential because of the diameter squared part. So if you have a 1-inch circle and a 3-inch circle, it's not 1 times 3, it's 3 squared. So it will actually be 9 times bigger, or have a volume 9 times larger than the 1-inch circle. So yeah, never go for the 2 mediums. Always buy the large. And it's normally a better price anyway. I say it looks too thin and too thick at the same time, which is honestly a first for that kind of problem. Yeah, I knew we were going to be working with a lot of acetone, so I'm sure you can probably hear the vent going in the background, because I haven't figured out the editing to get rid of that sound yet. But it seems it's on its way. We've added a little fresh acetone, so we know it has enough. I guess the only thing here to do is give it a couple minutes and let it melt. About said let it cook. We're not cooking anything. We're gonna let that melt. You know, ferment it like a good chef. Okay, and it's been about 30 minutes, so we'll get another set of gloves on here. You can see it is pretty wet, so it may be a little difficult to work with, but I mean, fuck it. We'll try it and see how it goes. Worst case scenario, we leave it sitting out for a good while, and the extra acetone will oil off, you know. It'll start to dry. That definitely feels a little bit lumpy, but workable, I think. And how it's pulling together like that, it should form a pretty good dough. Yeah, definitely a little on the runny side. It probably would have been fine without the extra splash acetone. Patience is a virtue that evidently I don't possess. So I can feel like little grains of sand in here. I'm going to assume that is, and you know what? I just did a dumb. Where the very centers of the bigger shells haven't evaporated yet, or haven't remelted, I guess. Because before I was going to roll it out. Good practice run, good practice. Now I honestly don't know if that's going to be a problem, but back in there. We shall see. I may end up just letting it sit here and melt a little bit longer. I got the stirring stick out because I have 0.05 of titanium granules that we were going to mix in here. Because rather than a solid, burning color, I would actually like I would like it to sparkle. Okay. Now we take our glitter violet composition. And a great practice round. Let's do it a second time. It gets noticeably harder to see. And it turns out our wax paper is single use only. That's annoying. But you see, this is super forgiving. What, I've just made a dozen mistakes consecutively and it's still usable. Congrats, we're back to where we fucked up. All of that work. I say we, you know, we're sharing the blame now. I didn't have music blasting in my ears making me deaf, so you know, I say we share the responsibility. Voila, back to where we started. So now, unlike this one, we're not actually going to be priming this like normal. But we will be getting out our jar of hurt. We'll be getting out our jar of hot prime here. And we're going to kind of assembly line this. So you take one of your tubes here, and you can just use it as a cookie cutter. Clean up your extra. And you can get a good 2-3 out of this. Ish. That's our tube full here. So now we'll take that end that we can see and just into the hot prime. That's nice primed. Set it down here. It'll go into a drying rack when we're done. Just keep going. So again, the idea here is giving us a lot of surface area. So that what the surface area here that you do see, if we throw it for good demonstration purposes, is going to give us a really bright flame and it's going to give us a lot of flame. But then we're doing, this is rolled out in 3/16 of an inch. We're putting 3 of them in here, that's 9/16. Oops. Trying to explain and work at the same time. It doesn't work great. But that 9/16 should only burn for a second or two. And remember, we don't actually want this burning as long as the stars do. We only need it to burn the length of travel. So we launch a shell. It's got a flight time of, say, 3 seconds. And so we only need these to burn for 3 seconds. But these will actually burn kind of faster than our stars will, because the stars have a lot of surface area on the outside, but it has to burn through the outer layers before it gets to, you know, the center, which is why they last so long. These, having a much higher surface to volume ratio, should actually burn faster. That was interesting. See, now you can get the whole family involved here, because ask your mom or your grandma, depending on who the baker in the family is, about the best way to use a cookie cutter. And then you get cookies out of the deal. And when you're fat like me, that's an offer you can't refuse. So if you've enjoyed this video, make sure to chase that like button. If you've liked these stories delivered in video format, Wrong channel. Someday, someone, somewhere, on this godforsaken marble, will think my jokes are funny. Now, for those of you who are bakers, don't spoil the next part for those who are not. So you see all of this waste. But what we can do is, I mean, you've seen me do it 3 times now with this batch. So we're going to hope that it has not dried out too much. And that is a little bit dry. We'll go ahead and try rolling that out. If it survives, it's good. If it dies, then it was weak. Yep, nope, too thick. Can anybody guess what the solution is here? That's right, we're burning the whole fucking house down. Don't make fun of my shed. If I ever get a sponsor, at this rate, it is going to be a wax company that sells wax paper. And this episode brought to you by Great Value Wax Paper. What? I didn't sell out. Now, I wonder if it's my imagination, but every time we do that, this seems to get darker to me. Is anybody else noticing that, or have I actually just lost it? And there we go. Back for more, I see. Whatever you do, don't let the intrusive thoughts win, because while I'm doing this, I had the thought cross my mind of, you know, I could put like some really interesting stuff right here in the middle of these, like I don't know, a black cat or an M80 or something, and then everybody else will have a very interesting day. But we're gonna file that under intrusive thoughts, and therefore not do it. And you know, you don't have to use the entire thing every single time. If you legitimately wanted to take 1 or 2 rising tails out of a store and then use the rest for stars, you could totally do that because it's the exact same stuff. Again, you may have to wet it a little bit because it may dry out while you work, but at least that way you don't have any leftover. Ooh, let's see if I can get one more out of there. Ooh, it's gonna be close. See, I am just that fucking talented. Never doubt my abilities again. So with this, I think we probably have enough stars to suit, well, rising tails to suit my purposes. However, this dough is getting harder and harder to work with, so I will probably call it here and turn the rest of them back into stars. So I have just that little bit more. Out of the 8-ounce batch, folding it 3 times, we got 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32, 33, 34, 35. So just shy of an 8-ounce batch, working in about 3 times over, we've gotten about 35 of these things. So, I mean, are you really going to make more than 35 shells? That's a lot of material. So, see you next time when I believe we're moving on to our D1 Comet Stars.